do you feel pressure to score a knockout in this fight? I mean, I know the thing to say is, I'm going to be patient. I'm going to, of course, you're going to be professional. You're prepared for it. You have a fight plan. But do you feel inside a little bit of pressure to get a knockout and to get that, get that attention that you haven't gotten yet from the public?
Welcome into the ProBox TV Big Fight Breakdown. That's right, we have a big one at 168 pounds. Carson is known for its wars. We'll have one this weekend. Don't forget to download the ProBox TV app. Never fall behind in your boxing news. Also, watch our Wednesday night fights in extreme clarity. Well, it's Jimmy Smith in studio with Chris Algieri. We're joining us via Zoom, Paulie Malignaggi, and the coach, Teddy Atlas. The fight this weekend, Diego Pacheco versus MACIEJ SULECKI. And joining us right now from Los Angeles, Diego Pacheco, my hometown. Love to see you, man. First question for you. What do you feel this fight does for you? When we discuss this fight, they talk about how tough your opponent is, how he's so hard to drop. It's going to test you in ways other fighters haven't. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, SULECKI is a great fighter. He's been in a lot of good championship fights. He's been in there with a lot of good fighters. He's beat a lot of good fighters. So on paper, he's my toughest opponent to date. We'll see Saturday night what he brings, and then that's it. I know he's my toughest opponent, but as of right now, I'm doing my part in preparing for this fight. Doing everything I have to do to come out victorious Saturday night, and yeah, now it's fight week, and I'm here. I'm ready to go.
Diego, I've called a number of your fights on undercards for Matchroom. Really came, as you came up, interviewed you a bunch of times. It was really fun to watch the progression as you're really just blasting guys out. Talk to me about your last fight with McCallum. You actually looked human in that fight, and everyone really came down on you about that. But I just looked at it, I guess, first I called his fights as well. He's a very talented guy, very tricky style. Just talk to me about that fight. Maybe what were you feeling there in the ring with him?
Yeah, Sean McCallum, he was an undefeated guy, a good fighter. I just feel like he came in the fight just to kind of not to win. He came in here to not let me do what I do, and he had success doing that. He came in the fight and just made it real tricky. He was a crafty fighter. He was doing a lot of awkward things. Anytime I try to start my offense, he'd grab me right away or just do certain little things that just made the fight like a slow paced fight. And I mean, ultimately I got the win, but he just did a good job in not letting me get off and just learning from that and getting back to the gym and moving forward.
Diego, you talk about learning from a fight like that with an opponent's mentality like that. And, I guess I got to ask you, what's the biggest thing you take out of a fight like that? What's the biggest lesson? Because the guy you're fighting now, he's not known to be stopped. He's got two losses, SULECKI, and his only two losses are to two high profile names. But at this point, he's never been stopped, but he's also a little bit past his prime, I'd say at 35 years old. How do you deal with a 35-year-old who's never been stopped when typically a guy at 35 years old who's on the decline, though he's had a solid career and on paper is your toughest fight? How do you deal with the potential that this guy at a certain point may realize, wow, this kid is just too strong, too young, and I'm going to just look to survive myself as well here because I've never been stopped, and I can hang my hat on it being a guy that's never been stopped despite the 3 losses now that you would make it against top opposition. So what's the biggest learning lesson you took out of the last fight? Because with the way you've been destructive in your career, you may turn a veteran like this's mindset into a survival mode as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, for sure. I feel like the biggest thing just being a little more patient in the first few rounds. I feel like because of the way I've been performing my past fights, I came into that fight trying to do the same thing and just hurt them from the beginning and I feel like just being a little bit more patient and letting the fight come to me, instead of trying to force things and just doing what works for me, and that's boxing, using my jab, using my long punches and breaking guys down and eventually going down to the body and landing those uppercuts. And yeah, man, just a boxing and being a little smarter in the early rounds.
Diego, I one of the things you have been blessed with great physical assets of length and height. And one of the things that's impressed me in your career, in your young career, is how disciplined you've been and to use those assets. There's a lot of fighters that have them. Fundora is a great example for me. He was tall as heck, but he never fought tall. I don't know if he wasn't taught or he wasn't inclined to because of his personality, whatever. But he didn't use those physical assets, and he paid a price. He got knocked out by Mendoza. Then, of course, he redeemed himself in that bloody fight for the title against Zoo. But what do you attribute that to? I'm curious as a trainer that you're so disciplined. You know how to fight tall, and I give you a lot of credit for that. Were you always that way, or did Jose Benavides, since you got with him training you, did he have a lot to do with it?
I feel like that's just always been my style, and I give a lot of credit to my first coach who taught me how to throw my first punch. His name is Chuy Avila from Paramount, California. He's I feel like my style really reflects his style, and I remember as a young kid, just always being taller, always being lanky and skinny and tall, so I would always have to use my length. Of course, that was my strong suit, and just learning how to box and using my legs to get around the whole ring. Um, Obviously, I love banging it out as well. I love going to the body. I love landing those uppercuts and combinations in close. But what I do best is box and use my reach because of my height. And I feel like even from my height, I'm pretty athletic for being 6'4". I'm able to use my legs. I'm able to stay low, and I have pretty good defense. I really haven't got hit too much in my fights. Haven't took much punishment, and I'm excited for this fight. Sulecki's a guy who comes to win, and that makes for a great fight. So I'm excited to just keep progressing and keep getting better as my career unfolds.
We're sitting down with the undefeated Diego Pacheco, 21-0. You were critical of the fact that Berlanga now fighting Canelo Alvarez. You thought it should be you and Berlanga next. What's your thought on that fight and losing that opportunity in a sense?
I just felt like it was the right fight to make. Me and Edgar, we both have similar records. We both are 21, 22 and 0. The only difference with him is he's 30 years old and I'm only 23. You know what I mean? And I've been asking my promoter Eddie Hearn to make these fights with these bigger names because I felt at this point in my career, people seeing that I could box, people see that I can punch, I'm a good all around boxer. The only thing missing is the name on my resume, and that's really what I was looking for to finding a guy who I can get the credit for beating, and for one reason or another, these fights weren't getting made. So the next biggest name was Sulecki, who they brought to the table, and I said, let's make the fight happen. Credit to Sulecki for taking the fight and taking on the challenge, and now it's fight week. We're here. And that's my focus 100% is on this fight with Sulecki.
Diego, having said what you just said, I'm going to piggyback off that. Because this is your coming out fight, so to speak. I mean, the boxing insiders, everyone knows you. They know that you're a budding star. But the public doesn't know you yet to that extent. Do you feel, I mean, you're human, you're smart. You just talked about such things. Do you feel pressure to score a knockout in this fight? I mean, I know the thing to say is, I'm going to be patient. I'm going to, of course, you're going to be professional. You're prepared for it. You have a fight plan. But do you feel inside a little bit of pressure to get a knockout and to get that attention that you haven't gotten yet from the public?
A little bit, yes. I feel like just me myself, I know what I can do in the ring. I know what I'm capable of. So, of course, I'm coming in there with the mentality that I could get the guy out of there, and that's something that I from my last fight, I learned to not force it, let it come to me, and just do what I do, box, control the fight, make the fight my fight, and then if I see an opening and take advantage of it and get the guy out of there. But of course, just just the expectations I hold on myself is to put on a great performance, and I know I have the knockout power, so it'll come. I just can't force it, and just let the fight come to me.
Diego, the last time we spoke was before the Caceres fight, and I remember standing next to him. And first of all, you're huge for 68, and I'm standing next to you. I'm like, man, this guy's big. And you were saying you were making weight even easier, and I saw that too. I could tell by the way you looked on the scale. You looked very fit. You looked healthy. How much longer do you think we're going to be at 68? Are you still making that weight easy? Have you found the recipe for that? And is there a chance that we'll see you at 75? Because the number of names that are around 68 and 75, I mean, you've got a lot of dance partners. What's on the horizon?
Yeah, for sure, man. And I'm only 23 years old, so I feel like there's enough time to make these fights with all these great fighters, and that's what I'm in the sport to do, just like you, Chris, and Paul Malignaggi as well. You guys are some great fighters who took on great fights, and that's what I'm looking to do as well. I want to like Teddy was saying, the boxing world knows what I'm about, but not the average person or the public, you know what I mean? So of course, I'm ready to get on these fights, and 168, man, I feel good, like I've been eating well. I haven't even put on a sauna suit, and to this morning I weighed in at 173, and I just feel great. 168 I feel is the perfect weight for me right now, and of course, I'm only gonna keep getting older and bigger, so 175 down the line is for sure in my mind, and but for now, 168, looking to become a world champion at this weight class. Whenever the time comes, and I'll be ready for when that time does come. For now, just keep making the biggest fights possible, and keep building my resume and my career.
Diego, everybody has their motivation to something that, that sticks out to them, why they do this. What motivates Diego Pacheco? What makes Diego Pacheco the man and the fighter that has become this guy we speak about today, and this guy we're talking to today because you've put yourself on this profile? What is it that drives you?
Just my upbringing, the way I was raised. I come from a humble home. A small home where family was all we had. All we had was each other. So, just watching my parents work extremely hard, every day. No days off for them. It was just to take care of us and to give us a better future. That was all the motivation I needed to help my parents out, and help my family and my loved ones, and I started boxing when I was 10, and ever since I started, everyone would always tell my dad, like, oh, take care of your kid, he's got an amazing future, he's got a lot of talent, and yeah, man, that's what really just my parents, they're my, I'm sorry about that. But my parents, yeah, they're just my motivation, my biggest motivation now. I have my baby who's 6 months now, and just more motivation, and just everything I've been through in life, just motivates me to chase greatness and reach all my goals.
There's no I'm sorry there, Diego. That's a question that's open-ended, man. That's a question that's expressing you. We all have, as fighters, things that push us, things that motivate us, things that press our personal buttons, that we know how to press those buttons within ourselves to get the best out of us. So don't ever say I'm sorry when you're answering that question. But that question is a personal question for you to to express yourself, man.
Yeah, and then I have my brother just passed away earlier this year after my last fight. So that's another big motivation, to make him proud and just keep going,
His memory.
Thank you so much, Diego. Appreciate your time, my man. Best of luck this weekend. Thank you so much, brother.
God bless.
Thank you guys.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
So that's Diego Pacheco, undefeated, 21-0, 17 knockouts. We know about the record, know about the numbers. When you talk to this kid, what stands out to you, Chris?
He's hard not to like, man. I mean, he's a great guy, great kid, and coming up and super talent. I mean, like I said, I've had the opportunity to interview him a couple times and speak to him for real. So I knew that guy, and I think the more that the outside world, the mainstream people know who that guy is, I think it's going to really help him in terms of his marketability. Because listen, the stuff he does in the ring, forget it. I mean, he's a beast. He's 6'4". He's got power, like everything he said. He's got the boxing skills. He's got defense. He's training with the right team. So the sky's the limit for someone like that. that.
Teddy, I got to ask you from a coaching standpoint, I could point out a million boxers that were tall and rangy for their weight class who just weren't athletic enough to put it all together. How rare is what he brings, which is tall, which is rangy, but as you said, good boxing technique and really athletic. How rare is that?
To be honest, Jimmy, I go back a little with the history of the sport.
Yeah.
I had it available to me when I was up in Catskill for all those years with Cus D'Amato and Jim Jacobs, Bill Caden with Big Fights Incorporated. They sent us all the tapes. So I had the privilege of seeing some great fighters that not everybody would be able to see. To me, it's not unusual at all. Tall, wiry guys were always great punchers. I mean, Bob Foster, great light heavyweight champ. Might have been a heavyweight champ if it wasn't a couple guys named Joe Frazier, Muhammad Ali around at that time. But he was so skinny, he looked like he needed a meal, and he could punch like hell. Lou Jenkins, lightweight champion, go back to the 30s. Alexis Arguello, Carlos Zarate. I mean, all these guys were skinny guys, wiry guys that were both athletic and they could punch like hell. Why? Because they were thin. They got leverage. They got torque in their punches, and they learned how to use that. And they also learn how to use their height and their range, which I'm impressed with. And that's why I asked that question coming out of the box to Diego is you see so many guys that do have those assets. They don't learn how to use it, but he has learned how to use it. So to me, it's not unusual at all. You see these wiry guys, and right away, I used to take kids to the Bronx when I was training the fighters in Catskill once a week to the South Bronx smokers to get experience, because once you taught them how to fight, you had to get experience. You had to go somewhere to fight. There weren't enough fights up in that area, so I would take them down there for these smokers. And I always wanted to see the fighter before I didn't trust anybody's opinion of it, because everyone lied. Oh yeah, my guy only has one fight. Meanwhile, he's got 10 fights or 20 or 30 or 40. So I would always want to see them all. Very rarely if I could trust someone's opinion if I hadn't seen them. But otherwise, first thing I do is let me look at him. And I look at him as a potential opponent for one of my kids that might not have that many fights. And if he was wiry, skinny, I turned him down out of hand. I turned him down. If I didn't know enough about him other than that, I said, nah, no thanks. We'll pass on this one. And then I'd watch him that night while he fought and knocked somebody sideways. And I say, you know what? I'm kind of glad I passed on that. So that's my feeling about tall, skinny guys, Jimmy.
I love it, Paulie. When you look at, obviously, this fight, you mentioned SULECKI, one of those guys, a veteran, tough as a $2 steak, might be on the downside of his career, but tough to knock down. For you, is it about kind of bringing Pacheco down in those rounds where the guy's still in front of him to keep that frustration down that can happen when you're 23? Is that part of it?
I mean, it definitely is part of it. It's just part of the maturing process, recognizing what's in front of you. You have your style and you have the way you know how to go win a fight. And that comes down to, that something Teddy says, the attitude of a fighter. So you've got that when you're a solid prospect, when you're a guy people are watching. But then there's the recognizance factor. When you're typically fighting an older fighter who's been there, done that, I actually disagree with one thing Diego said. I think you have to start fast against guys like that and let them know that they don't belong there. Then what typically happens, because they know how to survive, they'll go into a survival mode because they're older veterans, they're grizzled a little bit, they know how to not get knocked out. And then at that point in the fight is when you have to make the adjustment to like, okay, this guy is now no longer feeling he can beat me. He's now here just to survive, and he knows how to survive. How do I get around that and still get the stoppage? Because that's one thing he said he struggled with last fight, right? He had a guy who wasn't trying to win. Well, with SULECKI, these guys have a past that they know how to win, right? They've been at a high level. He's not been champion, but he's challenged at a high level. And he's been solid at he's gotten wins at a decent level and fought at the highest level and came up short, but always on points. So with SULECKI, it's a guy who you have to convince him that he can't win. And at 35 years old, if you got that youth energy and you got the skill set behind it, and you may be the punching power that Diego has, you may convince him. And then you've got to then make that adjustment. Because once you convince him, SULECKI is not, because SULECKI is who SULECKI is, He's not a guy who's going to be a journeyman and lay down, right? Typically, these kind of guys are where they are because now, okay, they know how to make that adjustment and say, okay, I'm a little older. I don't have the energy to match this guy. I know how to go these rounds, you know? We saw guys like even Macho Camacho was great at this later on in his career and whatnot. He never got stopped, right? To a degree, even Adrian Broner knew how to do this. You know, that's why he never got stopped, right? The output diminishes. You kind of know how to go the rounds. So how do you get around that? How do you not get frustrated? Even if you're not going to get the stoppage, how do you not get frustrated and stick to a game plan that's making adjustments and getting better to show us the wrinkles in your style? And that's, I think, what it turns out to be about as you go up the ladder, because eventually you're going to get to the guys where, you know, they're going to be trying to win the whole time. You know, when you saw fighting guys in their prime, there is no, let me just go some rounds, say, I can't beat this guy. There's, you knock me out or I'm going to knock them out, and that's it. You know, you get to that point. But before you get to those guys that are on your level and have the winning attitude the whole time, you got to take on these guys. This is sort of the last step before that championship level.
Chris, you mentioned it. A lot of people don't know this. Muhammad Ali, before he defeated Sonny Liston in 1964, the fights before that, Henry Cooper and a guy named Doug Jones that arguably he lost, but two performances where he looked kind of shaky before winning the heavyweight title, which is why he was such an underdog in that fight. Chris, you talked about that bounce back from a fight where, as Paulie pointed out, he didn't look like a world beater. It was a frustrating fight, a guy holding a lot. How do you mentally bounce back from that for a great performance?
Well, he looked human, and that's really what people came down on him. I thought it was undue. Because I know Sean McCallum, and I've called his fights before. He's a tricky guy. He's a smart guy. He's a thinker. So I wasn't very surprised that fight actually turned out to be a fight and be somewhat competitive. But you know, the amount of pressure and negativity that Diego got for that, I thought was unwarranted, because I think people were overlooking Sean. And yeah, sometimes you have tricky fights. But the thing about Sulecki's been down in all of his big fights. The key for Diego is to keep him there. That's really the difference. And that's where, Champ, you mentioned all those tough fighters who've always made the distance. Hey, Broner always had a really good chin, as well as being able to survive. Sulecki's chin's not great. He gets up. He's got a lot of heart. But, you know, and he's scrappy enough to get by. Diego's needs to put him down and keep him there. If he does that, and this guy's gone the distance with Daniel Jacobs. This guy's gone the distance with Demetrius Andre. He beat Jack Colque, who's a very, very tough fighter. And he beat Gabe Rosado. So, you know, between those four fights, to be able to be the one guy that stopped him, even at 35 years of age, I think is going to be a nice feather in his cap.
Teddy, I'm going to leave it to you. What is the ceiling for this guy? You said physically he has all the gifts, all the tools. We saw his attitude. It's a positive one, very mature for 23 years old. Where do you see his ceiling in the next couple of years?
Well, I think the champs, when we were doing the interview, which I think was a good interview with him, brought it out. And Chris brought it out, where he's got the skeleton. You know, he's only 23. You know, some guys could be young and they're still not going to go up in weight or not that well because their bodies aren't suited for it. But his body's suited to move up in weight and to light heavyweight without a problem. And with that power, you know, he'll carry the power. I can tell you that right now. He'll carry because that's one of the concerns. You move up in weight, are you going to carry the power? Yeah, he'll carry the power, you know, because he is a puncher. Punchers are born, they're not made. He's wiry. He gets what I talked about earlier, the leverage. So as far as the ceiling, it's a high ceiling. He could win the title. Obviously, at 168, that's his first stop. That's his first priority. Win a title at 168 and then see if he can consolidate the titles there. Obviously, he would love to get a Canelo fight. That's the big money fight there. And then go from there to light heavyweight and see what he does then. See, you know, you got two of the best fighters in the world in boxing at light heavyweight. So I understand that in Bivol and Beterbiev, but they're not spring chickens, you know, and they're getting older. And of course, Pacheco, he is the spring chicken. So, you know, he could pick his spot, stay 168, maybe, you know, clean out the division a little bit there. To me, that would be the possibility of what's on the horizon for him if you want to think in real big ways. And then at the right appropriate time, when the coast is a little clearer, move up to light heavyweight. And then maybe even when it's not clear, just when those guys are a little older, even older, and move up there and test the waters there. And if you can do that, wow, you've done a lot.
Teddy, I don't know if you've ever been around that kid. He's big. I mean, he's got wide fist breadth, these wide shoulders. He's got a big. You can even hear his voice. He's got like big man voice. He has a big frame, like you said. I could easily see him at 75, and he's got another 8 to 9 years of prime left. I could see this guy at cruiserweight. Thank you, Teddy. You jumped right to where I was thinking. I could see him at cruiserweight with the frame that he has. I'm telling you, I've been around him. That boy is big.
Look at Zurdo Ramirez. I mean, he's a Mexican
Yep,
fighter
exactly.
with that kind of frame as well. He's at cruiserweight right now, and he was a 168-pound world champion.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's a great example.
Incredible ceiling for this kid. We will know more after this weekend. Of course, the Big Fight Breakdown lays it all out for you. Don't forget, download the ProBox TV app and never fall behind on your boxing news. We'll see you after the big fight.
Wednesday Night Fights.
Dynamite action on Wednesday Night Fights every other Wednesday on your boxing channel.
Coming up on your next Wednesday Night Fights, September 11th. Rising Guatemalan star Lester Martinez puts his O on the line against fellow undefeated warrior Joe Showtime James. Live from the ProBox Event Center in Plant City. Get your tickets at proboxtv.com or take your chances at the door. Wednesday Night Fights.
For more ProBox TV, scan the QR code on the screen or go to the App Store and Google Play. ProBox TV, your boxing channel.